I'm a bit late to the party when it comes to Siege, only picking it up last year. Hearing a friend of mine had it, I decided to purchase it so we could play online together. We were instantly addicted. It's tough but fair gameplay combined with the nuances that every operator map brought to the table had us enthralled in the game. It's the type of experience that has your eyes glued to the screen, palms sweating and heart racing, all culminating with the sigh of relief and victory or the screams of rage and defeat. Every time you think it's about to get stale, they release new operators and gameplay changes to keep you coming back. Sure, the game's not perfect. It does contain minor quirks that do frustrate me from time to time, such as Twitch's drone not being able to go over small gaps, yet can go up a flight of stairs no problem, or how Jaeger can't just reach out to place his ADS, even when it's something trivial blocking his way. But these are minor, not really affecting the gameplay on the whole, which by the way is solid. Siege's greatest strength is in how it builds and releases tension every round, similar to a well constructed horror film. You pick your operators, find your targets or defend the objective, slowly advance or defend, destroying cameras or spotting people on them, while making or guarding entry points, with each second that ticks by slowly racketing the tension, until you finally reach the climax, the gun battles, where the round is won or lost in an instant. The round resets and you do it all over again. It can sound repetitive, and in some ways it is, but the nuances every operator, map and your teammates bring to it makes it an endlessly fun gameplay loop that can always keep even an easy game exciting and tense. Now in 2020, Siege is a game that I've sadly put too much time into. At the moment, I've clocked well over 200 hours in the game. I know for many that's just the start, and they've probably got many more hundreds of hours to go. But for me, I'm at my breaking point with the game, and maybe to the surprise of many viewers, much of that has nothing to do with the gameplay itself. Before I continue, let me just say, I know nothing about the game before I bought it, or the changes coming to it in the future. Everything I talk about refers to the PS4 version of the game, as that's the one I've played. There are some major issues in the game that I'm just going to flat out disregard, such as people using mouse and keyboard. This puts them at a huge advantage against us controller users. Another is players Ddossing, which is when someone overloads the server, causing everyone in it to lag. Basically, it's a cheap way for people to win, as you're unable to move. The developers try to discourage this behaviour, maybe not harshly enough. At least they're trying, and to be fair, the majority of this might be the fault of Sony. Finally, in the purposes of full disclosure, I am absolutely dreadful at this game. Most of the time, I let the AI choose a random operator for me. I panic a lot, making countless silly mistakes. Lastly, my aim is terrible, no matter what gun or attachments I use. Sneaking up behind someone and having them spin 180 degrees just to take my head off is an unfortunate common occurrence for me. The point of telling you all that was just to show you that none of this has affected me enjoying the gameplay itself. Finally, I just want to say that I would rather play Siege than 99% of the other online shooters out there. If it wasn't for what I'm about to say next, I would highly recommend you play it. Nevertheless, I can't, because Siege continues to let me and its communities down, with its seemingly unwillingness to adapt its service model. In fact, as time goes on, it's becoming more and more insidious, as the amount of paid for content climbs ever higher, while the free or reasonably earned content shrinks ever smaller. The microtransactions is not unlike a virus, slowly destroying and creeping into every aspect of the game. A bold statement, I know, so let me go through what I mean. There are so many microtransaction systems at play that it's hard to talk about it all in a coherent manner. But I'll try my best to get all my problems across. First off, let's talk about progression in the game. The game rewards progression with currency, allowing for the purchase of new gear and operators with renown. And you're rewarded less than 200 for a loss and just over 300 for a win in a multiplayer match. A new operator can cost you anywhere from 10,000 to 25,000 renown. So I'll let you do the math on how long it would take you to buy a new operator with in-game currency. Let's just say that you're going to get very acquainted with the free operators. keep in mind you've already purchased the game, a game that mostly only offers online multiplayer. Further from that, all the operators are in the application in storage, meaning you have access to them, except they're just behind a paywall, an arbitrary lock so they can siphon money off their player base. That's not including all the accessories and outfits you can also buy with Renown, and they're not cheap. If you win a game, you're given a random item from time to time. So thanks Ubisoft, I guess. You can earn more Renown through daily optional objectives, but they're not a viable solution to the problem. Renown boosters are. They will boost your Renown earned to a reasonable level, so you don't have to commit your life to the game. They're available for purchase through R6 credits, and they're the only way of boosting your Renown. What's R6 credits? R6 credits are the in-game alternative to Renown, which is obtained with real-world money. So, your options are: pay real money so you can earn more Renown with the boosters to purchase operators and gear, or skip that and just pay the flat fee with R6 credits, taking the progression system out of the equation. Siege undermines its own progression system by allowing for a flat fee purchase to all its content. The many additions of the game also feeds into undermining progression by coming packaged with a range of operators past and present, and it's the operators that you want. They offer the most gameplay variety. I will fully admit that the base operators that come with any package of the game are some of the best to use. They are more than enough to accomplish any task in Siege. Many of the new operators are incredibly specialised, meaning their usefulness is situational, depending on the map or objective. But it's for that very reason why the new operators are some of the most fun to use. They work like puzzle pieces, offering new ways to tackle old maps, making even an exhausted map enjoyable again. The Season Pass grants instant access to upcoming operators in that year, also allowing you to play them a week in advance. This is before being purchasable by everyone else for 25,000 Renown. Likewise, they are allowed to be played in ranked that week, the week where they're unavailable to players without the Season Pass, giving the people with the Season Pass an unfair advantage in ranked. Maybe only a minor one, but an advantage nonetheless. I can only hope this is just an oversight. On the other hand, the Battle Pass, which is somewhat new to Siege, is just a flat out stain on the game. Why? Battle Passes are used to fake a progression system by making you feel like you're earning content, when, in truth, it's all paid for. You don't earn anything in the Battle Pass progression system. You're rewarded for investing your time and paying your money. That's it. It's as simple as putting a carrot on a stick and making you pay someone so you can chase the carrot. Battle Passes are synonymous with free-to-play games, which Siege is not. Which begs the question, why is it in Siege in the first place? I think we all know why. To make money on outright lazy content. I was hoping to see less of this sort of thing in games, not more of it. I'm not the first to make this argument, that Siege's microtransactions are destroying the game. Because of that, I've heard many rebuttals on the topic, and I'd like to answer some of those now. To start, many of you might say the microtransactions doesn't affect the gameplay. While that is mostly true, it's not entirely so. How come? Here's an example. All operators were designed to cut a certain silhouette, making them discernible from a glance, which is pivotal to a reflex shooter like Siege. It's not perfect. I personally have mistaken mute for smoke and vice versa on many different occasions, but maybe that's just me. Nevertheless, on the whole, it works as intended. The countless different purchasable outfits, costumes and headgear changes that discernible silhouette. While some changes are only minor, others can be quite radical. Take the elite outfits as the extreme example, completely changing the operator from head to toe. This all muddies the water, so to speak, when it comes to gameplay strategies, as it brings a layer of uncertainty to all your actions. Okay, to be fair, it's only a minor problem for casuals like myself. But the point is, it could be dreadful for higher level players, where team chemistry and callouts are crucial for victory. I'd be the first to admit customization is great, but when it gets in the way of clarity, that's when I draw the line. Another common argument I hear in favour of microtransactions is, they're only in there to pay for server and maintenance costs. This is a response
I highly recommend people who say it do their research on, as I could spend hours refuting this claim. Decisive to say, the money made from microtransactions by Ubisoft and the costs it takes to maintain a server like Siege flat out isn't even comparable. This is because the gap between the two is so large. Trust me when I tell you, the cost isn't near enough a problem to justify what they charge you. If you want to argue it's to fund development costs, then why does the Season Pass even exist? That was the whole idea behind it, to fund the development of new operators. Another argument that I don't really understand, but I'll try to answer it anyway, is that other multiplayer games are just as bad or worse with microtransactions as Siege. This argument is built on a false premise, that if you've accepted it in one scenario, that you must be accepting of it in another, which just simply isn't the case. Let me explain. While it is true that more and more games are destroyed with microtransactions, a far too common occurrence these days. Often these are mobile games, or are free to play at the very least, which, if I was being truthful, is still not ideal, but at least it makes a lot more sense. It's much more understandable to provide a game for free and recoup costs another way, than it is to pay for a game and be locked off for most of its content. In Siege, paying for the base game is just the tip of the iceberg for entry. Furthermore, if we're going to compare and contrast other solely online multiplayer games, other franchises are far better. Take Overwatch for example. Maybe its gameplay isn't as compelling, but all the heroes are free and its progression is far better. Sure, its loot box system deserves criticism, and it leaves a lot to be desired. But, as a purchase, it's of far better value monetarily. And I only compared Overwatch to Siege as I thought it was the closest comparison, structure-wise. If we compared Siege to a game like Call of Duty for example, which gameplay I find serviceable at best, apart from gameplay, Siege wouldn't fare well at all if I took the time to compare and contrast the two. The best argument I've heard is this one, that the operators are new content and offer new gameplay changes, so shouldn't you have to pay for it? This is an argument that has some merit in my opinion, and if I was in a vacuum, I would agree. The operators are fundamental to Siege's gameplay. Every operator you don't have puts you at a disadvantage and makes the game more unbalanced. You could argue all day on how minor this might be, but the fact is, if I have something you don't have, it's an advantage. In the same way as missing cards in a game of poker would leave your options limited. If anyone still plays Yu-Gi-Oh, you'd know how new cards they release for can completely unbalance the game. I'm not saying that Siege's new operators has the same drastic impact, but the effects it can have still apply. Then why do I think this argument has some merit to it? Well, let's just say the only thing they charged for in the game was the new operators. For argument's sake, let's say nothing else could be purchased. I would then agree with this statement, as Ubisoft would only be charging for the present operators so they could fund future development for new ones. While still not ideal, it would be a concession I would totally understand for unbalancing the game. So basically, you're buying old operators so they can make new ones. In this regard, the Season Pass would make perfect sense, as you're funding for future development. Unfortunately, as the game is now, with countless outfits, charms, gear, R6 credits, Season Pass and the Battle Pass, Siege is making more than enough money than to detrimentally unbalance the game with paid for advantages. So yes, I am saying if you own the Season Pass, you've paid for an advantage, and I will fully concede it's only a minor one, but an advantage nonetheless. If you've watched this far into the video, there's a question you're probably wanting to ask me, and that is, why do I even care? Because Siege is a product that deserves much more respect than it's receiving from Ubisoft. I can honestly say it's the best online shooter I've ever played, and I genuinely believe Ubisoft cannot recognise the product they have on their hands. For a game that challenges you to earn its respect through its gameplay, everything around it feels unearned, cheap and lazy. The game at the moment is being torn down the middle. The game developers and Ubisoft are in a battle for Rainbow Siege's identity. Unfortunately, the publishers are winning. Here's a good example. Ashe is an original operator, therefore practically everyone owns her. She's also universally recognised as a good operator to use on top of that. So, she's the one they released the super elite Lorecraft outfit for. Before anyone says she looks the most like Lara Croft, I really want you to think about that. After paying for the Lara Croft licensing fee, do you really think the developers would give it to anyone else? What operator do you think would garner the most returns? Ashe is the only character with an elite licensed outfit from a hugely popular game franchise. This is an unprecedented move for Siege. Who is the most popular attacker to play in Siege? Ashe, obviously. What a coincidence. The whole point of that is to show that development resources isn't being spent in the right areas, such as improving the game. Instead, it's used for this. Useless outfits and gear, and people continue to buy it. Siege's gameplay in 2020, as good as it is now just a vehicle to sell you additional things and nothing else. The sad reality is, the game isn't a game anymore, it's a supermarket. But don't blame Ubisoft or the development team, blame yourself. I'm afraid anyone who plays the game, purchasing additional stuff or not, is complicit in this system, me included. Siege has become merely a scapegoat for all of Ubisoft's shady practices. I know that's a tough pill to swallow, I know it was for me, but that's just the reality of the situation, and I feel like it needed to be said. Before you make your angry comment below, calling me every horrible name you can think of, keep in mind you're defending a soulless corporation that only sees its users as dollar signs. And honestly, that's not always a bad thing, because it means money talks, and Ubisoft are reliant on the demands of the consumer. So, when you spend your money on needless knickknacks to feel special, that's all you'll ever be rewarded, and that's all Ubisoft will ever continue to develop and sell. The silver lining for me is, if the game went free to play as is, the majority of my criticisms would no longer be relevant, or at least would make some sense. I'll give you an example of what Siege is like to play for me today. Picture you've purchased your favourite TV show online. As you're watching, imagine every minute an advertisement shows up in the corner, ruining the experience. How long would you put up with it? How long before you think, is this really worth it? No matter how much you love the show, this little annoyance gets more and more persuasive as time goes on. That's what it's like for me playing Siege in 2020. Siege refuses to change, so maybe it's up to us to change instead to improve the game. I, personally, will no longer be playing, but I genuinely would love to have my mind changed, so feel free to comment below and discuss. This has been Jamie on Siege, and if you've made it this far into the video, I want to thank you for watching.